Hi, morning everyone, and welcome to this new episode on the Cluster Talks. Today we have a very special guest. Is Eija. She's very welcome to this podcast. Thank you very much for being here with us. And she's from the Automotive Cluster from Oulu, which is a very interesting area in Finland. And we had a few meetings before we had the opportunity to meet each other in some collaborations we had in the past, and it would be, I mean, it couldn't be in any other way that we invite her to be with us today here. Thank you very much, Aya, for being here with us.
Thank you, Josep, and thanks for the invitation. Happy to be here with you.
It's going to be fun. So thank you very much for everyone to tune in with us again. Hopefully the previous podcasts were interesting for you. And today we're going to be discussing some new topics. We are not sure which ones yet with Aya, but the main aim of this project is to just share experiences with you guys, try to connect with you, and trying to just explore what happens in the past, what's going to be happening in the future for the classic community here in Europe mainly, but especially try to understand what does it work for us, what worked for Aya, and in their experience along these years in the cluster, and try to put some information that could be somehow valuable for you, especially experiences that could be interesting for you. From the past podcast, if you remember, we had two questions for today from our last interview. It was how to make the cluster sustainable. That's talk financially sustainable, but it could be in any other ways. And we had another question, which was she asked Aya, she asked for you, and probably for me too, but for you, what kind of tips could you put on the table to for the members of the cluster to see interesting and valuable, right? So these are the two questions that the last interview put on the table for you, and as well at the end of the podcast, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions for the next interview. But so far, which one do you prefer to start with?
Let's start with the sustainability because it's such a such a strong topic in the automotive industry. I first initial idea was to sustainable in a way that the cluster has continuity. I would say that there needs to be controlled growth in terms of members in the cluster because it brings always versatility. So the more versatile companies we have in the cluster, I believe the stronger it is. But if I think about their CO2 emissions or impact that we have as a cluster, then I would say that the past 3 years have shown us that we can collaborate and we can meet virtually. So maybe that's the easy way to say that we are meeting each other sustainably over the net. In Oulu Automotive Cluster, we have several companies that actually contribute to their sustainability in the industry, and that's maybe my biggest asset in the cluster. So companies that have solutions that help automotive players to become more sustainable. Maybe shortly like that.
That's interesting regarding the automotive industry because we both, let's say, coexist in the industry. But the question was exactly how do you make the cluster sustainable? I mean, if I'm not wrong, and hopefully if our previous guest is listening us, I'm not missing the question. I think she asked us, how are you making your cluster sustainable? Not from the eco-friendly point of view, but from the point of view of quantity of activities you do, how you financially sustain the cluster on the projects that you develop, because there's I mean, I don't know in your case, and but in our case, we have almost 200 members. As you said, it's great because we have a very, let's say, very wide spectrum of companies, mainly industrial companies, but we have also technological centers, universities, engineering, consultancy, etc. But at the same time, Aya, that's a big challenge because you have to offer as well a very wide,
Yeah.
let's say, different lines of activities for all of them. And the more you diversify, the less you focus, right? How do you
Yes. Yeah.
manage that in your cluster?
Well, majority of the clusters, the companies in the cluster are small companies, small
Uh-huh.
and medium-sized companies. We don't have any big corporations, not too many of them. We have
Hmm.
some big customers in companies in the cluster. Um, so for me, important thing is that whatever the activities are, they are supporting the small and medium-sized companies in their activities to go international, to find customers, to find collaboration partners. Currently, we have three type of services in the cluster, and I think that's one of the answers to that sustainability issue. We have share services, which is sharing information about the
Hmm.
automotive
Hmm.
industry. Oulu region is famous for telecom sector, for
Hmm.
mobile
I
industry.
know that, yeah.
Uh, yeah, radio frequency is the core of our city. So our companies don't have necessarily big track record in automotive industry. So sharing information is vital, and that's very important for their small and medium-sized companies. The second thing is to find customers and collaboration partners. And I guess that's been like a glue in our cluster, because companies feel that they get the benefit of introductions to potential customers, potential collaboration partners on a regular basis.
Hmm.
So providing that service on a regular basis, and trying to support them also in different market areas. We've been focusing now in Sweden, in Germany,
Hmm.
and in Spanish markets. We also have some connections to China, but the idea is that as long as we can support the small and medium-sized companies in their efforts to make business, to find those collaboration partners and customers, then that's a glue. That's the sustainability at the core. The third service that we have is matching researchers and companies together.
Okay.
But we've been lately more focusing on that, finding customers and collaboration partners.
That's very interesting because it's quite different from our reality. Because here in our case, it's not that we are not helping them to find customers. Of course, especially all the consultancies and the SMEs, they are looking always for new opportunities, business opportunities as well. But our focus, what our associates demand the most, is to help them to improve their competitiveness, not that
Okay.
market approach that you put on the table, which is very necessary for your members. But in our case, despite we, of course, all of them are always looking for opportunities, what we help the most is to improve competitiveness. Because in our case, we have a lot of industrial companies.
Yes.
They manufacture components for the automotive
Mhm.
industry in this case, but they really ask us to improve the competitiveness. And I guess now thinking that probably that's directly related to the capacity for them to be more competitive in the economic point of view when they approach their OEMs or tier ones or etc. So, but it's very curious how different clusters, different markets take a very different approach, but always
Yeah.
on the benefit of the associates, right?
But you have to remember that in Oulu we don't have any production for cars.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So the only production facility is 600 kilometers away from us in Uusikaupunki. So basically, sharing the information about the industry per se, what is automotive industry, how it works, what are their value chains, what are the OEMs and tier ones and tier twos, and getting introduced to them, that's very vital, so
Mm-hmm.
that they navigate and operate in the industry that is probably not familiar to them from the past. So we have our biggest tier one is Electrobit Finland. They've been serving the automotive industry ever since they started their business.
Mm-hmm.
But the majority of the companies are from the ICT background, and now that the industry is digitalizing, I think they need that help to get introduced to the automotive industry
Mm-hmm.
as such. Yeah.
Let me ask you.
What was the other?
Oh, yeah,
What
please.
was the other question?
Could you repeat the question?
What was the other question that you
Yeah,
had? The previous.
yeah. The first one was the how to make the cluster sustainable on the point of view on how to sustain the activity, and the other one was the regarding the tips for staying valuable. But I think somehow we approach both of them because I would say just taking what you said and my experience is that the main focus as of a cluster and therefore as a cluster managers of course it's to really listen what your cluster members need, right? I remember when I talking to an expert on commercial and sales very long time ago. He told me that the key is three steps. First, ask what they need, get what they need, give them what they need, right? And sometimes when new clusters are created or when a new cluster manager raise right to the position, and I have a dinner or a lunch or a tea with this person, and sometimes he I like to provoke a little bit them. I'm not gonna lie, but I ask them, oh, what are you gonna do? What are you thinking? It's gonna be your approach. How are you gonna solve that? Often I see that, and it happens to me as well, that we have too many things on our minds, and sometimes
Mhm.
we forget just to ask it. Ask the questions, right? What do you need? What do you think the cluster needs? What do your company needs, right? And I remember that. I mean, I this let's say this tip. It's been in my head for many years. And I remember a few years ago when I was, because I started as a project manager in the cluster, and later on I was
Mhm.
promoted to cluster manager a couple of years later. And I remember that the first thing when they proposed me the position, my mind started to work, like an engine. I'm gonna do this and that and that and that and that. Then I remember this wise words from this person: ask what they need, get what they need, give them what they need, what they ask for. So I took the time to spoke with every one of the members of my board of directors and ask them
Mhm.
very open-minded, um, where do you see the cluster going? Okay, what's your vision for the cluster? To every each one of them, and of course, I get a very different answers. But
Yes.
I was, despite that, I had my own vision about that. I really took the time to ask to every one of them, and later on, because along the next year and a half, more or less, it was time to prepare our new business plan for the cluster. Because I mean, probably as you do, we rewrite the business plan every 3 years, more or less. But at least we try to update it,
Okay.
right? So that year, I remember we took, like, I think it was like 8 months to prepare the business plan, because in every one of the seven strategic areas we have in the cluster, because I mean we are divided for strategic areas, we set up a workshop, like a 3 4 hour workshop. I mean, plenty of time to create different dynamics and activities and workshops in every one of the aspects. So we ask the companies in every one of these seven strategic areas what were the short, mid-term strategic plan, right? And from all that information, we create our own business plan. It was very challenging. It took a lot of time, because I mean you can write by yourself a strategic plan like in a week if you want,
Yes.
right? We all did that in the past, but it really was a big effort. But I'm very proud of that, because there were some things that were in my mind that if I would never implement it, my associates would never appreciate that, right? And for the other hand, there was a lot of things that I mean, I didn't even thought about that were very important for my cluster members. So it was really crazy, and at the beginning, but very useful at the end. I don't know your thoughts about that, or how do you manage that kind of situation?
Yeah. I started as a cluster manager during the first lockdown in 2020.
No, really?
And I was so I had a lot of challenges starting as a cluster manager, because the only means that I had was phone calls and Teams meetings. I never got the chance to meet people face to face. And the second challenge was that when I started, I didn't have previous experience of being a cluster manager. So it was like somebody pushed me to the cold water and said, swim, survive. Fortunately, quite many of those companies, I knew them beforehand from my past experience, from my past career. So I also knew some of the people in the cluster. So my way of starting as a cluster manager was, first of all, start communicating. Hi, I'm the new cluster manager. I'm here to help you, and I'm here with a team that is willing to help you. So I started with the communications. Communications usually is the basics you need to have in place. I got help from my colleagues to set up their newsletter, their templates, etc. They already had the contact details there, so I was kind of automating some of the communications, doing that on a regular basis. Maybe before I started, it was like a little bit more random. And then I thought, okay, I can't meet the people face to face, and this was my second solution, was to set up online meetings, because that was business as usual. And I was thinking it is important for me to get to know their cluster members. So my concept was to have 1.5-hour meeting where you have 15-minute slots per cluster member. And I was just asking people, will you join me online session, a cluster meeting where you present your company?
Did you did that one-to-one?
No, it was a cluster meeting. So when I have the program, I have those 5 talks and the program ready. Then I set the invitation to the cluster members saying, let's meet online next Thursday, 2:00 Finnish time. And these companies will be representing their solutions. And what I noticed is that, of course, it was very valuable for me to know what these people are doing, who they are and where they come from, what their aim is in automotive industry. But what I noticed very quickly, it was the same for the cluster members. So there were new companies, there were a lot of new people, there were a lot of discussions in the chat, and people gave good feedback. I mean, even if it's online meeting, if the content is interesting and you get to know people, it is a starting point for one-on-ones in the future. So
that's interesting.
starting with communications, setting up the online meetings. That's how I started during the first lockdown.
How do you members do you have in Oulu?
We have 130 companies. I would say 80 of those are from Oulu region, and the rest of them are elsewhere from Finland. So we've slowly grown to a national cluster.
You are growing to a national cluster.
It has become a national cluster, and I'm always asking myself why it has happened, because we haven't been promoting this. We haven't been actually marketing.
And how did it happen that?
2 things. When we were finding customers and collaboration partners for existing companies, and when we had a match, I mean, OEMs had a good discussions. They came to us asking, do you have some more? I mean, do you have solutions for this and that? Which meant that sooner or later we had to look broader. We had to scout the new companies and solutions for those OEMs elsewhere and introduce them. It is. I think it's okay if you call for inside Finland and ask another Finnish company, hey, I have a potential customer or collaboration partner for you. Would you like to have a session with them? That was first. But the second was that the companies in the cluster were referencing to their other entrepreneurs that we are in this cluster, we need to be participating that as well. Those 2 topics. So helping the existing members as best as we can, And then they were spreading the good news. Hey guys, I think you should also join Oulu Automotive Cluster.
That's very interesting.
Please.
That's very interesting. For me, sometimes I don't know it happens to you, but for me, sometimes it's a challenge to decide which aspect to get as a priority in our day-to-day activities, right? Because sometimes I mean probably the same as you, I receive a lot of calls every day. There are days that I don't even have enough time to return all my calls, which is I mean it gets me very angry because I'm the type of person where I try every day to empty my email mailbox, right? With the WhatsApps, it's quite more challenging because I mean WhatsApp it's becoming like a thing on the day-to-day activities. But when I don't have enough time to return my calls, it really gets very angry to me. But the reality is that one call after another call after another call after another call, I end up with a lot of requests, right? That sometimes I don't have enough time to process and I mean try to delegate among the team, and sometimes it gets quite crazy, right? From all the demands, and I don't know you, but I try to like compilate somehow, like to put some needs together and say, okay, these five companies need that, and the other five companies need that, and another 20 companies needs that, and these three companies needs that, right? And try to find solutions per groups, right? And let's say like focus groups or working groups or whatever, but
Yes. Yeah.
it doesn't work all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many working groups you have at the
Too
moment?
many. No,
Okay.
for me, the key of the working groups is to have not they don't have to be at infinitum, in the meaning that a working group, I end up realizing that a working group needs to have a very concrete goal, right? And it cannot
Yeah.
be like, okay, there's a working group for sustainability, or a working group for I don't know, like uh, like for robotics or blockchain. No, no, no. Working groups must be with a very, very concrete goal, very concrete objective, right? Because as soon as you reach that, you have to close the working group. That's where I end up. We have, as I mentioned, 7 strategic areas where inside those areas things happens, right? But those areas they only like meet like twice a year or 3 times a year maximum, like a general review of the strategic area. But in our case, everything happens for projects because we are very project oriented, industrial project oriented,
Yeah.
or working groups. And
Yeah.
if you ask me about working groups, very concrete situations like okay, a working group to analyze the war in Ukraine, right? A working group to
Okay.
analyze the raising prices of the I mean of the electricity, of services in general, right?
Yes.
But it has a very concrete goal. Okay,
Yeah.
the goal of the group is to see what were the prices in the past, what are the prices right now, what we're going to be expecting in the future. Therefore, how do we have to negotiate all the deals with the electric company? As soon as we reach a goal, through talking among us, through inviting an expert, or through I don't know anything, the group is closed. And if in the future the need appears again, I'm gonna put another. I mean, let's put together another group. But we don't. We try to not keep it at infinity. If the group has to work for 3 weeks, it works for 3 weeks. You have to work for 3 months, 3 months. If it has to be
Okay.
a year. But it has to be like a deadline. I don't know. The problem we
Yeah.
had like a year ago or a year and a half ago, with the transport, right? Sea transport, from the all the problems for the shippings from China to Europe and etc. Or I remember a working group that I think they only met like 3 times, something like that, was for a very particular problem with electricity supply in China. Okay, so there's a working group with, I think it was like 8, 9 companies who had subsidiaries in China that have been problems with cutting from electricity. So we create a group just to discuss that. But as long as the group reaches the goal, the group disappears. And if we just check every sometime after a month or 2 months, we talk, okay, that was the problem really solved? Do you need anything else? If there's a new need or the same need is still there, okay, let's put the group together again. But apart from that, we have very few groups. I have one group that we met every month, which we invite only general managers from the companies to discuss that, like a general market situation, and we take at the end of the meeting, it's 1 hour every second Thursday, every second Tuesday of every month, and that's the only group that we kept as a general basis with the general managers, just to talk about the market situation. And apart from that, I would say there's no other one. There's no other. How do you manage your working groups in the cluster? What's your approach, Eija?
I tell your public secret. We don't have actually working groups at the moment, but our plan is to create ones. That's why I was asking how you work with the working groups. I used to work for the ICT sector, and in that industry, I was accustomed to the fact that you always had some sort of working groups, either inside a particular company or inside a group of companies that have a same goal or same interest. And I think I have a hunch that we might have 1 or 2 working groups starting next autumn. If I would choose, if I would be the one to decide what's the topic for the working groups, it would be probably skills and new stuff, because companies want to grow, and the challenge in Finland, I guess it's a challenge everywhere in Europe, is how to find their skillful employees. And that would be something that I would love to see. Yeah, that's a big thing. But it's actually back to your initial thought of asking the companies what they need. Maybe they are not interested in having their working group for skills and employment and HR type of topics. Maybe they don't need it at the moment. And also I see some technological areas where I think it would be wise to have the working groups. But we are now in the process of getting more information from our cluster members, and also preparing that we have resources to facilitate the working groups. I don't know if you share my idea, but sometimes even the topic is important for a company. It's difficult to find the time in your calendar. It's difficult maybe to find the persons who commit to the working group.
And not only that, but what I realize is sometimes that even there are some interesting topics that companies are not willing to talk about that openly. You know what I mean? I remember a few years ago, before previously to the COVID, that we had. Do you remember? Like it was like 4 years ago, something like that. It was a very the private security networks and all that stuff, all the security related to the networks. It was a hot topic, at least here in Spain, because there was just a couple of situations. One of them with one of the big companies here in, I'm not going to say the name, with a big company here in Barcelona, had a cyber security attack that unfortunately it was successful. So they lose a lot of information. They had a very big problem, and that it was all over the news. So everyone was very interested on that topic. We had been holding like maybe for a year, three or four projects on our platform regarding cybersecurity, and no one was interested at that point because it was all over the news. Everyone jumped on the topic, and everyone was asking us to, oh, we have to do something from the cluster, etc. Said, hey, there's few projects on the cluster regarding that, and no one was taking care of that, and so everyone was there. But what we realized is that most companies are not open to talk about that openly. Few of them, like we were able to put together a group of like 18, 20 companies to talk about cybersecurity on the company, I mean, on the facilities, machines, and all the big data, and like digital twin and all that stuff. But the other topic, which was cybersecurity on the vehicle, no one was really available to talk about that openly. When I approached the OEMs at the time, we have two OEMs here in Barcelona. Right now, we only have one of them. I talked with the OEMs, and they told me, listen, Joseph, you have to realize that the cybersecurity topic, it's so delicate that even inside the company, not everyone is allowed to talk about that. We have a very close groups to talk about that with very restrictive, let's say, headlines on how they have to talk about that, and what topics are able to talk about that, which ones are not to talk outside this group. So it's something that it's never gonna happen in a cluster. So even the, as you mentioned, even the topic, it's an important one. It's not always possible to talk about that in a cluster, and that's something I learned from in the hard way, right?
Yeah.
So how are you going to start with your grouping groups?
Okay.
How are you going to do it? How are you going to start with your working groups?
I have an idea. We are currently having workshops. We actually had the face-to-face workshop yesterday, and the last workshop will be online. So 3 workshops, one of them face-to-face, and the topic was strategic foresight, how to predict the future from company perspective. And my idea was that when these workshops are over and I get feedback from the companies that were participating in the workshops, I plan how to include their strategic foresight work in the cluster services, and maybe that would be offered for the working groups. So if they form a working group to a certain topic, I could offer from the cluster their additional extra to that working group to provide the strategic foresight information, for example, to that topic. Let's imagine that we have a working group for user interfaces, what's happening in the cabin, and what's happening on the software side, etc. And we have quite many companies that are working in user interfaces in automotive industry. So if they form that working group, have a regular meetings, I could support them to plan what's in the future for them by using those tools to plan the future.
That's very interesting.
And that would be, and my idea is that would be maybe, motivating people to join the working group and also stay in the working group, because we provide them information they would not get otherwise.
Right. And at the same time, it can give you the topics to discuss in the working groups, which is very interesting.
Exactly.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting.
That's a rough idea. That's an idea.
I like it. It looks like it may work. It may work for you. Let me ask you, where are you struggling the most? Because you mentioned before that you are in the cluster manager position for 2 years right now, right? And in confidence, let me ask you, where are you struggling the most in this new experience for you?
Maybe 2 or 3 things. First of all, our group is very versatile. we don't have too many companies that are actually deep in the automotive value chain. So it takes a lot of time to introduce one single company and get them to the business with automotive industry, because this is our industry that has long life cycles for the products, which means that the designing life cycles are also long. So so having all kinds of companies in the cluster that are in general interested in automotive industry and maybe kind of a business development phase, how to get more companies that are actually doing business in automotive industry. That's challenge number one. Challenge number two is that most of Finnish companies, I mean, the whole company base in Finland is small and medium-sized companies, and our small and medium-sized companies are really small. In automotive industry, I've learned that you need to have, production power, you need to have delivery power, you need to have financial power. And some of these companies, they have very nice solutions, intelligent solutions, maybe disruptive solutions, but it takes a lot of time and money to get to the business with the customers. So maybe trying to find them good collaboration partners is the key, but that's a challenge, the size of the companies. And then I have, because this is an open ecosystem, we don't have any fees, membership fees or anything. This is Oulu Automotive Cluster is managed by Business Oulu, and Business Oulu is my employer. It's the city, it's the business development organization for the city of Oulu. So we are actually using taxpayers' money partly to facilitate the work. So when something is for free, it usually brings hangarounds. That's I see that there are some hangarounds in the cluster that are maybe seeking some other type of business opportunities, not necessarily in the automotive industry. But I don't think it's a bad thing.
It's
the only
not
thing
bad,
is I need to know
very
what
different from what I learned. So you're not then a private entity, you're a public entity?
We are public, Business Oulu is public entity.
That's Business Oulu, but the automotive cluster?
Automotive cluster is also, because we are managing that. We don't have any association. We are not LTD.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah. Whoa, then I have a couple of questions, but I don't know if you can answer to me. How?
Okay, I try.
I don't want to put you on the spot there, but how do you manage your relationship with the administration? Because for me, it's a challenge. I mean, I would say not as a cluster, but myself as a cluster manager, I probably spend like 30% of my time with issues related with the administration. We are a private entity, 100% private. We have fees for the members, but of course we have a strong relationship with the local administration, Catalonia, and national administration, Spain. And I mean, not that much with Europe, but so far with these two ones. And it takes me at least 30% of my time. And this 30% of the time, it runs me crazy, because administration and private entities, first of all, they work at two different speeds, right? And at the same time, it's like sometimes, and I hope no one from my administration is listening to that, but sometimes I feel like we are playing in the same board game, right? But with different rules. Administration has one rule, private entities has another rules. Not from the legal point of view, which I assume are the same for everyone, but from the perspective of goals, approach, vision. I mean, I'm going to say about automotive industry, but I think I can just extrapolate to any other business. So the approach and the vision sometimes the administration have for the market, for the industry, and the vision that the industry has for its own industry, it's very different. And part of my job, it's It's to try to help the administration to understand the problems of the industry. And how often that happens to you, and how do you manage, Eija?
I'm just thinking if it's a challenge for us. Well, because this business Oulu is our task is to support companies to grow, invest, hire new people, and maybe get international. What I do in Automotive Cluster is pretty much what I'm supposed to do for the business Oulu
Yeah.
anyways. If I think about financial terms, we get we get some project money. European regional development funds are used in the cluster, so we get a little bit money from the European Union to support our activities. So there, I have a little bit things to do with the administration, simple project management, reporting, and things like that. But I would say that we have very open dialogue with our local administration, and specifically if I think about the financiers, they understand the value of clusters, and they understand the value of business Oulu facilitating that cluster work, because we are big enough to do that. We've been discussing whether Automotive Cluster one day could be privately governed. There are some privately governed clusters in Finland, but I would say majority of clusters in general in Finland are publicly managed.
Isn't that a stopper when you go to Europe? Because I know for some of the European projects, you are not able to apply to a public entity. You can only apply to them if you are a private entity. Is that a stopper for you?
Yeah. Not at the moment. Oulu Automotive Cluster is relatively new cluster. We've been operative since 2019, and then came the COVID there in the middle. So we've been not so active in European level cooperation or European projects so far, but that's going to be in the future. And then I don't know if it's coming an obstacle or challenge for us. So far, we've been able to manage.
From these years that you've been operating, how do you separate like the government priorities from the industry priorities? Because sometimes they are not aligned on the vision they have.
I would say that because this cluster is more like business development focused cluster. So I get to the fact that the more we serve the companies in the cluster, the more stronger we are, and maybe there is not that much of issues to be discussed with their local administration or government or Finnish government per se. We have a benefit of collaborations between our cluster and then Finnish governmental organizations that are helping companies and ecosystems to get connections internationally. We have a so-called Team Finland, helping Finnish companies get international, and we cooperate with that network as well. So, as I said, because we don't have the automotive production companies, we don't have the OEMs in Finland. Our way of working and our challenges are a little bit different. Maybe I would say our biggest challenge is that automotive industry has been doing the business like this, like past 100 years, and there are these, historically places where production takes place and where the companies are having their offices and collaboration partners. Maybe my challenge has been that what are those things that we can provide? What are the solutions that we can provide for the automotive industry? And creating the trust that we are the good collaboration partner. Sorry, I have a phone call coming. Maybe one of my customers is calling.
No problem. That's very interesting, because I think that relationships between clusters and the administrations are one of the key elements, because as I mentioned, we have a very, very strong relationship with the Catalonian government and as well with
Yeah.
national government, and both there are different relationships we have, but strong in both cases. And both of them, but especially a national level, we are being very, let's say, question in a good way, and the government uses us to try to first understand what's happening in the market, right, on the sector itself, and at the
Okay.
same time they use us a lot to put the information on what the government is doing to help the market regarding like financing programs or strategies or initiatives. So they ask us, but at the same time they use us to make all the communication about what's happening on the government regarding the approach to improve in our case the automotive industry, right? So it's a for me it's a big benefit that we are different entities, and at the same time quite frustrating sometimes. I'm not gonna lie to you, but I think it's a good thing. But of course, to have a cluster with no fees, that's I mean that's huge. I never heard about that in Spain.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, it's basically because we're a public utility, or most of our services are free of
Uh-huh.
charge anyway. So it's very difficult for us to say, okay, now you have to pay us in order to be a member of the cluster. Um, Another reason for that is that the organic growth of the cluster. We started with
Uh-huh.
5 companies that were more or less customers to
Yeah.
Business Oulu already. So now that it's been growing, maybe now there is a time to think what are those free of charge services and whether we will have services that you have to pay for.
That's a challenge,
Um,
isn't it?
I'm currently, yeah, that's a challenge. And I'm currently kind of thinking what are the structures in the cluster? What is our management system in the future? What are those visions and missions that we create for the whole cluster? Maybe after these years of growth, I mean, open ecosystem, and we have companies coming in, maybe it's time to think where
Hmm.
is the focus? Um, if there are several focus topics, like you have the strategic topic or themes
Hmm.
in your cluster, what are those in our cluster, and how what good does it bring to us that we find those focuses? Because if you are open to everybody, it's very
Yeah.
heterogeneous. You have small and big companies, you have software, you have hardware, you have services, you have everything, and it's difficult to find that focus as you were describing earlier. So yes, we are now in the path of making the cluster maybe
Hmm.
more organized and maybe more focused too. And I think the focus must be somewhere where we have
Hmm.
competitive advantage, that we truly have something to offer for automotive industry, because you have to build on something where you are
Absolutely,
strong at the
absolutely.
moment. That's the easy.
Something I learned because my background, I never worked in a cluster before. My background is from entrepreneurship. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and something I learned when you create new projects, new companies, or I create a couple of foundations and few associations as well. And what I learned when you create something is that you have to diversify. Of course, you have to have a little bit wide range of services that you provide, but at the same time, you have to be the best at something. That's the key. When you are the best at something, and at the same time, you have a reasonable wide um, value of services or products or whatever, that's the key to be successful. You have to be the best one at something. There has to be something that there's no one else that who does it better than you. That's the key. That's the key. And actually, regarding that, I know you had some questions for us as well. So feel free to ask some questions because I'm just throwing questions to you, and I know you had some questions as well. So please feel free to go with them.
Okay. Um, what what would be your kind of a main message or main messages to anybody who starts as a new cluster manager? Because I have now the background of starting as a new cluster manager. I didn't have the previous experience. So what are maybe your three key takeaways or advice to anybody starting as a cluster manager?
That's a good one. I would say try to create a community because among other clusters, I mean, because when you start, if you ask the cluster members what do they need, as I mentioned before, ask what they need, get what they need, give them what they ask for, and that's somehow how to work with your cluster members. But because of the weak, very weak variety of things that are going to happen to you, you need a support group. You need to find some other people who can understand you, because I'm going to tell you that your family is not going to understand you, but a cluster is a very particular thing. So you're not going to have very many relatives working in a cluster, right? Your friends are not going to understand you when you go there to take a beer or whatever, or a dinner or something, and you try to explain them your problems with the companies, with the government, with your board of directors. They're going to say, what kind of organization is that, right? So isn't it? And so there's not many people who can understand the situations you are working with, and that they are happening to you. And so get a support group somehow. Here in Spain, I'm lucky enough to have a support group of other cluster members where we met every week. Every week we have a quick call, only 1 hour, and sometimes we discuss, let's say, technical things about the cluster. But most of the time, I'm going to say like 70% of the time, we talk just about what's happening to us. How do we feel about that? And we try to share experiences on how that happened to me a long time ago, and I managed that way on this other way. Because what happens in a cluster, it doesn't happen in most of companies. I would say 99% of the companies, they don't have the problems that a cluster manager has, and it doesn't happen in the day-to-day activities. And so far, there's no university to become a cluster manager, right? In the best case scenario, you will have some kind of program, European level or national level or local level. I participate in a couple of them, but most of the information they give you, most of the training they give you, is like a technical training, like finances for a cluster, or how to prepare a project to apply for a European project. This kind of technical information, but mental and emotionally, there's a lot of things happening. And I would say, for me, one of the keys is to have a support group. That would say, that would be one of the keys. The other one, as I mentioned, is talk to your members, ask them what their problems are, ask them where their struggles are, ask them what vision do they have about the cluster, and put all this information together. Maybe you are not able to do it by yourself. I wasn't able to do it by myself. I just get all the information and I hire someone which was way better than me to help us to get the big picture there. Yeah, that would be my second go for this. And third, and I would say, your speed dial on your phone, have like half a dozen people that you can relate on, legally, financially, as a mentor or whatever. So it's like in the support group I was talking in the very beginning, but in a very concrete area. So have a lawyer for very specific things. I have a couple of mentors over the years. One of them, he's been a mentor for me for the last 25 years, something like that. And the other one, it's plus 15 years as well as a mentor. So they are people not related to the cluster, not related to the sector, but they are people that maybe 3 times a year, 4 times a year, I talk to them. And those are the people that when I have really big problems, because I get myself in trouble, all the time. and most of the time my team supports me to overcome these situations I put myself. But sometimes you have very, very delicate situations that I learn myself that I need help, right? They say, oh, Joseph, you really messed it up, or this situation, maybe it's not my fault, but that's really messy. And I have some people
Mm.
that I know I can call them, and hey, do you have time for dinner, or do you have time for lunch? There's a situation I want to share with you, and they don't provide me many solutions, but they help me to ask the right questions, right? And that's something that's very powerful for me, because without those people, I wouldn't be here today, and not only professionally, but sometimes even personally, because they help me to to be, let's say, a better human being, a better professionally and personally. And sometimes I see something that, oh, that that situation I should do that and that and that, and they help me to ask myself the right questions and get my own conclusions, and go way over myself, and grow personally and professionally. So yeah, that would be my three tips for you, on that particular. How do you feel about that? How do you receive them?
Um, I agree with you, and only somebody who is actually working as a cluster manager understands what it is. The only thing that I was like wondering was that our clusters are very different, and the age, the life cycle where they are at the moment is very different. Sometimes I feel that I'm only starting. I'm taking
Uh-huh,
baby
uh-huh.
steps, and somebody else is much further. But it's important, and very important. Your message is to get support, the personal support, career counseling, or anybody to talk to about your work. So basically, your message is to take care of yourself. You can easily burn yourself as a cluster manager.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense to me.
good reminder. Yeah, good reminder for all of us. Good reminder for all of us. Yes. Is there time for those questions
Absolutely,
for the
absolutely. There's
next
plenty of
interview?
time to go on.
Okay. Um, my first question is related to an observation that I have had. When I started with Automotive Cluster, and my perception of the automotive industry is and was that it's male dominated. So my question to the next cluster manager is, how do you get diversity in the cluster? How
Mm,
do you get more women
mm.
into the automotive clusters and automotive sector? Because women are driving cars as well,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
But you mean
So
you mean you need more
how to
women
diversity?
in your cluster, or
More
or in
women.
the companies of your cluster? Because it's two different things.
Yeah, I know it's two different things, but I'd like to see
Okay.
both, because this industry needs women as any other industry, and I would love to see more women also in the cluster work. Because when I look at clusters elsewhere, who are the members and who are represented there, it's quite male dominated.
in in
I don't
in
know
in my
what's the
cluster,
reason for
most of people are women. Actually, we are right now, we are between part-time, half-time, and I mean full-time, sorry, and yeah, and people and students. We have few students in the cluster as well. We are 11 people.
that.
From those 11, I hope I'm not missing it, but we are two males and nine females. So it's a,
Okay.
yeah, 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 yeah. And and the other topic is the industry. We're talking about the automotive industry. That's
Yes.
that's another thing. But I don't
Yeah.
have I don't have solutions for that. But I have some thoughts, and it's very. I think it really goes to the basis, because I'm gonna be generally speaking, and I hope I'm politically correct enough when I say that most of the time, please allow me to just generalize a little bit. men are more interested on things, women are interested in human beings, right? So cars are things, you know. That's why in when we talk about doctors and nursery and schools and all that stuff, it's female predominant,
Yeah.
right? And when we talk
Hmm.
about engineering and cars and that kind of things, it's generally speaking male dominate, right? But I think it goes to our
Yeah.
nature, and that's why I
Yeah.
think that if your approach as a cluster, it's not on the companies but on the people in the companies. I think
The
that's
people in the
why
company.
it's there's a lot of women working in the cluster. I mean, at least here in Spain, uh, mo- most of the teams of cluster member teams are female, generally. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I
Okay.
despite the sector they are working, the most of the
Hmm.
team members are female, because if your approach as a cluster is not is to see the companies as group of peoples, because let's be honest, companies are not only the building or the machines working there. The companies are valuable,
Mm.
as I mean, their companies are as much valuable as the people working there. If you understand that your work as a cluster is to improve the companies, you easily realize that your work is to improve the people in the companies, give them more
Yeah.
skills, solve some problems. Maybe sometimes the problems are personally oriented, right? Like family conciliation, or timings, or overcome situations, something like that. I think that's all about caring, right? I mean, all that you talk about
Hmm.
today, Eija, it's that you care about the people in those companies. So I think that's the way to introduce more women to the classic community from one point of view, but to the sector as well. So I think we need to respect the nature, male, female, whatever it is, and at the same time use that approach to mix, because for me to have a mixture in the teams, that's it's a key to work. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no group, no team, female or male, exclusively, that can work as good as a mixed team. Probably you agree with me with that, right?
Yes. Yeah. My second question was actually in a broad term for cluster management. For the next cluster manager in your podcast, is that what are your three most important takeaways of successful cluster management? So, what makes cluster management successful? What are the ingredients for that? Maybe two or three examples of
Yeah,
that,
I think I'm gonna
because
leave
that's
that question for the next guest, because I don't know.
yes. You still don't
No,
know.
I still don't know, to be honest. I still don't know. Sometimes I
Yeah.
have to be honest with you, Aya, and with all our audience as well, that sometimes I don't know what to do. That's the reality. That's my reality. And I'm not gonna say it happens to me every day, but it happens to me at least 3 times a week. There's some situations that, to be honest, Aya, I don't know how to manage them. I don't know. It's sometimes they are financial situations, or human resources situations related, or technical situations, or government situations, or macroeconomic situations that, to be honest, I don't know how to solve them. And I realized that the best thing I can do is to be humble enough to admit that I don't know how to deal with that. That's the best I can do, and that's the best I can get, to go to my team and say, hey guys, this there's that situation, and I don't know how to solve it. What are your thoughts on that? And or sometimes yesterday one of my team members approached me with a situation, and said, "Hey, Joseph, that's this thing. It's happening. What are we gonna do?" And I said, "You know what? I have no idea. I have no idea how to solve that. But let's figure it out. Let's figure it out together." And I mean, this person just started laughing. Ha ha ha. So no, that's true. That's true. That I don't know. I don't know. But let's start thinking together. Let's find someone who knows more about this topic than us, because in our day to day, I mean, you know that better than me. In our day to day, there's plenty of things happening, right? From the companies, governments, and macroeconomics and things. And I mean, neither you or I, we are experts on, I mean, not all of them, not even a 10% of those situations. So you really need to just say, okay, let me find out, let me talk to some other people. And yeah, yeah, I would say one of the keys, be humble. That's the best I can put on the table. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a very good start, because this is about people collaborating together. So
Yeah, it
it
is.
helps
Yeah, it
when you are.
is. It is. And yeah. Try to find, I mean, valuable team members, get experts, get the general people, and try to keep them together. I would say that's. I spend a lot of time talking to my team. From my 5 days a week, I spend one day fully only to talk to my team, full day. I don't do anything else but to talk to every one of them and ask them what the problems are they are having, and see if there's something I can do to help them with their problems, and try to understand what are the challenges, what are the struggles, and what are the situations, and try to give them connections with some other people, because most of the times I don't have the answers. So I just try to connect them to other people who may know the answer to that, or may have the same problem with them. And yeah, one day a week. So 20% of my time I dedicate exclusively to talk to my team individually, and try to understand what's happening to them, and try to offer them some solutions for that. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't have more questions, or I didn't prepare any questions. At the moment, we've been talking quite many topics already.
Yeah, we talk many topics. Let me ask you, just to be closing, because I know we are in the 60-minute marks, and I know Andrea will be there reminding us that we are on time very soon. But let me ask you, the cluster was created in 2019, as you mentioned.
19.
You've been
Yes.
cluster manager from 2020, right?
Yeah, 2020, and it was October when I
Oh
started.
yeah,
Yeah.
so almost it's been 2 years and something, not or 3 years around, more or less. What's the best thing that's happening to you in this period of time, and which was the most challenging thing on this period of time?
Yeah. For me personally, best thing is that I've been able to use the skills that I had before I joined Business Oulu, and before I joined Oulu Automotive Cluster. I've been in the events business, so
Okay,
I've been in trade shows
that's a good
and
background for the
organizing
cluster
all kinds of
manager. I can
events.
tell you that that's a good
Yeah,
background.
yeah. So I can, keep up with the skills and also develop events further. And I've been very happy to get very positive feedback. I know during the COVID, when you didn't meet face to face, people were a little bit
Yeah,
tired of online
yeah.
meetings. But whenever I had a meeting or I had an event with a certain topic, I got always good feedback from people. So I was doing the right thing also online.
Awesome.
Biggest challenges have been that I have another job inside my inside Business Oulu, so I'm not fully focusing on automotive cluster. So balancing the work and the work balance work-life balance
Mm-hmm.
has maybe been the personal challenge so far.
Oh, so
There are many
you are
things to
like a
do.
part-time cluster manager.
Yes,
Whoa,
at the moment I'm
that's a
not
big
full time.
challenge. That's a big challenge.
Yes,
Is
but I try
the
to
other job
manage it.
more or less related to this activity, or completely different?
Yes, actually it is because I work for industry and clean tech sector, and so sustainability. I have a circular economy topics also on my desk. So sometimes they are like three together: automotive, industry, and circular economy.
Quite related,
So I
quite
can
related.
combine. They are related, yes. So, but the biggest challenge has been, balancing the time, and also what you mentioned earlier, when you have many things ongoing and you could and should do a lot of things. How do you prioritize? And who can help you to prioritize what is the most important thing now, and what is the thing that you can do later, or maybe in 1 year or 2 years. I personally, I've been also very fortunate that I have very lovely colleagues, very supporting
Awesome.
team, and they do great work, and they complement me. So they have skills that I don't have. Their working methods is maybe more organized. I'm a creative person. I live in the day in this moment. So it's been very inspiring
Uh-huh.
to work in this industry and in this cluster, and a great source of motivation as well, and also the people that I work with. So I look forward to their upcoming years with Oulu Automotive Cluster.
Awesome. That's awesome. Okay, Eija, so thank you very much for this time that you spent with us. Thank you for sharing with such honesty the questions and experiences that you had. Just could you please remind me the questions for the next guest that you had that you
Yeah,
would like,
the first
or
one
anyone
was,
new that you have right now for the next guest we have.
yeah. So, what are your what are your three most important takeaways in successful cluster
Okay,
management? So, what does it take to make a
a cluster
successful cluster
manager. Yeah.
management? Yeah. And then maybe it was a little bit broader, maybe how to get more women into automotive industry because companies are in the cluster, to get the diversity. And now that we've been discussing, maybe also how to balance their short-term,
Uh-huh.
mid-term, and long-term
Okay.
goals
Priorities. Yeah,
that you
yeah, yeah,
have.
yeah. I understand. I understand.
Any tips on that? That would
Okay.
help me.
Okay, so we take those questions for our next guest that we will have here in the program. But so far, yes, thank you very much for joining this the experiments. Hopefully, it's been profitable for you this time. Maybe you learned something. I learned a lot of things. First of all, that there are clusters which are government funded. That's very interesting for me. That I didn't know that, and it's a challenge, and at the same time. So I appreciate really all the time that you spend with us. Hopefully you enjoy it. And thank you everyone who
Thank you.
has been listening to us as well. Those long because we are over the 1 hour mark. That is the limit my team put me. But I speak a lot and I'm very questionable and I really very curious about what's happening in the world. So thank you very much for everyone joining us today. Hopefully it's been also useful for you guys and see you soon. Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you, Joseph. Bye.